Hi, everyone. Welcome to the January 22nd, 2025 Regional Housing Council meeting. Did I get the date wrong? No, I didn't. Thank goodness. Sorry. I barely know where I am. I just walked in the door. But we're going to go ahead and get started. And as always, why don't we go ahead and start with introductions, and we can do a quick little roundtable. Carolyn, would you mind introducing yourself and who you got from your city joining with us today?
Who did you call on, Michael?
I called on you, Carolyn, if you wouldn't mind kicking us.
Okay, I didn't hear my name, but I heard the silence. So I am Carolyn Cox. I'm Lacey's representative to the Regional Housing Council. And I'm joined here today by Ryan Andrews, our planning manager, and Jennifer Adams, our housing coordinator.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Danny, would you mind introducing yourself and who you've got with you today?
Yeah, hi, Danny Madrone with the Olympia City Council. I'm joined by Councilmember Vanderpool, who is the alternate to this committee, and city staff. I see Jay Burney, Jacinda Stelgis, and Darian Lightfoot.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Emily, would you mind introducing yourself and some of your county counterparts?
Definitely. Thanks, Chair. I am Emily Klaus, Thurston County Commissioner for District 5. I am joined here by some staff members. I see Tom, Elissa, right? I keep trying to call you Eliza, but it's Elissa, right?
No, Elisa.
Elisa, thank you. I'll make sure I get it right. Let's see, who else do I see here? That's all for staff, and I believe Commissioner Grant will be joining us shortly. I think she has another meeting that ends at 4:30, and she's the alternate commissioner on the board as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much. For Tumwater's part, I'm obviously here. I'm also joined by Councilmember Joan Cathy, who's my alternate. Thanks so much for being here with us today, Joan. Also Brad Medrud from our planning department. I think that's it from our neck of the woods. And I believe we have an incoming chair of one of our advisory boards. Tom, would you mind introducing?
Yes. Also wanted to note, sorry, we do also, Caven Hill is also a Thurston County staff member along with the entanglement. And for our advisory boards, we have Candace Garman, who is the new chair of the Homeless Services Advisory Board. And we also have Charlia Messinger, who is the chair of the Affordable Housing Advisory Board.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being with us, Candace and Charlia. So why don't we go ahead and review the agenda. I don't think there are any changes that I'm aware of unless staff have any changes to the agenda since it was sent out. Don't see any hands being raised. So moving to our first action item is just approval of the meeting minutes from our December 13th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I will move to approve the minutes from the December meeting.
And is there a second?
Second.
That's a motion by Commissioner Klaus. I think that was seconded by Danny. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, that takes us to public comment. Has anyone signed up to offer public comment today?
We do not have anyone, sorry, go ahead, Leah. We didn't have anyone sign up, but we can see if anyone wants to make public comments. They can raise their hand. Sorry to cut you off, Leah.
No problem. Just going to echo that. I don't see any raised hands in the attendees list.
All right. And any last call for any raised hands if anyone wants to offer public comment? I do not see any either. So we're going to just jog right along to our first sort of more substantive action item that's associated with some discussion is our RHC May retreat. Tom, I think you're going to help us walk through this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. All right, so wanted to, was it November, we talked about the idea of having a longer retreat for the RHC to address some of the bigger picture kind of issues that the RHC wanted to address. And so you charged the tech team with starting to flesh out some ideas to develop we're calling it a retreat. So a half-day meeting at some point in May. And so the tech team has had several discussions about this, and we're moving things forward that we wanted to present to you tonight. So we are all on the same page and get your feedback at this point in the process, and then hoping to take a next step of maybe forming a subcommittee to take this retreat across the finish line, so to speak. So within your packet, we've outlined some of the basics. We are looking at a date in May. No date has been set yet. Tentatively, we're looking at a Friday, possibly May 16th or 23rd, but we will send out a doodle poll to find the best date and time that works for folks. If folks have some immediate input, if there's a day of the week that is better than others, please let us know. But our thought was Friday would most likely be the best day for folks. We're looking at, roughly a 5-hour meeting, so perhaps from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. or 12 to 5. If there's a preference to shorten that to 4 hours, we can certainly do that, but we're proposing 5 hours. The invitees would be all of the RHC members, the 5 voting members, along with the alternates, the chair and vice chair for the 2 advisory boards. And then either the city, county manager, administrator from each jurisdiction. And then depending on the jurisdiction, 1 to 3 tech team members, which would give us a total of roughly around 30 people. So pretty substantial size. So wanted to get input on that. We're proposing we provide light snacks and beverages, but probably not a full scale lunch or meal. Again, depending on whether we do morning or night, we can adjust the food. We reached out and gotten some suggestions for possible facilitators that jurisdictions have used in the past. I have not reached out yet to make contact. Wanted to kind of have this meeting first, but we have a couple possible facilitators. We intend to reach out to get a quote. We're estimating a level of effort of around 42 hours for this. So around 30 hours of prep time for them to help us develop the agenda, do some interviews with key folks, and then the facilitation, and then just a few hours, 6 hours or so for post-facilitation, wrap up and next steps to really kind of capture key steps, but not looking for a full, extensive write-up of the notes. But so deliverables for the facilitator would be meeting with key participants prior to the meeting, assisting in developing the agenda and meeting objectives, facilitating the meeting, and then a post write-up of the key decisions, next steps. So those is where we're at with the logistics. We have not identified a location yet, but we will work on that. But any questions, comments, anything that folks would like to see different or anything added on the meeting logistics, I'm happy to share my screen if that's helpful to kind of show that. But this was also in your meeting packet. I think it's helpful for me to see faces on screens if we're going to have a discussion.
Yeah, Carolyn, go ahead. See your hands raised.
Well, in looking at this list of possible facilitators, we used Nancy Campbell at our last retreat, and I believe we're going to have her back this time for our upcoming retreat. And she was excellent. Some of the facilitation we've had in the past didn't really cut to the heart of the issues that we were trying to address, because I think there wasn't enough understanding of what the true issues were. And so I would highly recommend her. And I'm also wondering about the Heritage Room at the fairgrounds might be a possible location that maybe Emily has the keys to that building. that might work well. It's good size without being crazy big, and should be reasonable.
Yeah, thank you. Danny, see your hands raised too.
Yeah, and I assume we're not working through like the details right now, because it sounds like the hope is that a subcommittee will form to flesh this out
No.
further. I'll just state that I don't have capacity right now to serve on a subcommittee. So I hope it's also open to like alternates to be able to participate in that and to fill gaps. You know, I'm looking at the key purposes and objectives, and I kind of hope we dig a little bit deeper and get a little bit more specific. When we talked about doing a retreat, it was really, you know, a lot of this is like kind of sorting through our identity as and role as an R8 as the RHC, which, you know, I think it's important to spend some time on that. But I know that we also have talked about this retreat in terms of what are we coming out working on together, like what, and I think that's where we've struggled a lot. You know, we've developed a work plan, but we're, you know, there's some things that we're doing really, really well and working together, and other things where we're just kind of struggling on how to move forward. And so I just hope that part of our key purpose or objective is to have the things that we work on together. In regard to facilitators, I actually, you know, I'll just disagree with Carolyn. I haven't had the best experience with that facilitator. You know, I'd be fine with either the Athena group or Wendy Frazier. If we need a third for a subcommittee to consider, Amy Leneker has been really, really great for the city of Olympia. But I just, you know, don't want to get too deep into it, but I just would have a different opinion there.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom, and to the whole tech team for putting this together. I think some of the things that are really important to me are to make sure that there is a facilitator. I think we're going to be a lot more successful if there's someone who can help keep us accountable. I know personally for myself, I have a tendency to just get wrapped around the axle about a specific thing, and it's really helpful when we create the parking lot board. That's my favorite lot. I definitely like. That's definitely a tool that I rely on to sort of make sure that I keep things on track, and then we revisit things later. And I think a facilitator that's assertive with us when we all have very strong opinions about these kinds of things, I think is really important. I think maybe the subcommittee could maybe find some time to talk to each of the jurisdictions if there are different feelings about what are some of the qualities of a facilitator that would make the event more successful, so that we can make an informed decision about that. I do think that's one of the more important things. And I do agree with Danny about the goals, the 4 goals and points that are being laid out in there, and that if we can get sort of stronger about purpose, because we have had so many discussions about, you know, we sort of seems like we're at a fork in the road for, do we want this organization to be primarily an organization that approves sort of these funding recommendations from our boards and panels of folks with subject matter expertise and lived experience? Do we want to also take on some secondary roles that do some things in addition to that? And I think that's a pretty big purpose for why I'm excited that we're going to move forward and try to get this accomplished for May. The other locations that I sort of had in mind too is, like, we did use the Lacey Community Center the last time we had a retreat for this organization, which I say was wearing a mask for it. So it was probably in 2021 or 2022. I can't quite remember. It's all a little bit blurry back then. But that facility seemed to work well. There was adequate parking, a lot of accessible parking spots too, and a lot of room to walk around. And it's, congratulations, Lacey, you have a wonderful community center. And maybe when Tumwater finally builds one, we can host the next RHC retreat. But for now, I did think that was a good space. But in terms of other questions for folks, similar to Danny, I don't think I have personal capacity to serve on a subcommittee, but I think we also need to keep it to 2 members who are representatives of jurisdictions in terms of if they're elected officials, to make sure that we don't form a quorum for it. We probably can't do 3, but we could do 2. And I think it would be great if any of the alternates want to do it, they could volunteer too. Emily, see your hand's raised.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First, I do have a point about the subcommittee, but before that, I wanted to say that I left out in the introductions Leah and Kaven. I'm used to Kaven's role before they were on as a county employee. So I apologize for that. And Leah, I didn't see you there, or it didn't register for me. So I just wanted to not leave the two of you out because you're very important to the team. So they're also here on behalf of the county. But in regards to the subcommittee, I'm happy to join to serve on the subcommittee. I would love to do that. I'm looking for additional opportunities to engage after you know, finally coming back on board, and I'm happy to be here. So any way that I can be of service to the Regional Housing Council, I'm happy to do that. And I have capacity. There might be some times where, you know, I might have limited capacity, but of course we could work those details out. So
Great, thank you for volunteering. Tom, I saw your hand before you, Danny, then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, just real quickly, a couple things, just to kind of, I meant to mention it before on the facilitator, the county through our local home fund admin will cover the costs. We're not going to be reaching out to jurisdictions for additional funding. And so we will be looking for also a cost-effective option to make sure they're available on that. And then certainly I do kind of want to talk about the logistics first, but then I think the bulk of this conversation really is around those key purposes and objectives. So I did want to make sure that I can walk through some of the thought process of the RHC tech team on that, but acknowledge really hoping to spend the bulk of the conversation here to get your input on those the key purpose objectives, because that is super important as we move forward.
Great. Danny?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer for the subcommittee, you said, like, you know, no more than 2 voting members, of course, because we can't have a quorum. But I think like it could be more folks, including alternates who aren't voting members. So that way we can get, you know, depending on how many people are raising their hand. Like I've already said that I'm not going to be one of them, but just to put that out there, that it could be more than 2 folks, as long as we're including alternates who wouldn't be establishing a quorum. At least that's my understanding.
There are folks who are smarter than me who would know that, so I'll trust that your understanding is right on that. Robert?
Yeah, I'll volunteer. I know Danny won't, but she knows I was going to, so I'm volunteering if need be.
All right, great. We're happy to have you. Thank you so much for volunteering. I also want to circle back to Tom's question. Do folks have additional points to raise and chat about sort of the goals and objectives and what we want to try to, like where do folks have thoughts on where we want to be at the end of the day of that retreat? Like what sort of takeaways we want to have? Are there ways that you would adjust the goals on the list? Are there goals that you would add? What are your wildest hopes and expectations for this fantastic retreat that we're going to endeavor into? Danny.
Yeah, I said this before, but just put tie a bow on it. Just coming out with something actionable. I think that like what's listed here are good things. Like it's good to understand the role that we have, be in agreement on that. But I also just, you know, one of the things I've been wrestling with the RHC is like, are we making funding recommendations and that's it? And if that's the case, then let's adjust our schedule accordingly. Or are we doing more? And is there, you know, what is the work that we're doing together? And it would be my hope that, you know, having everybody, you know, all of these 30 people there who aren't always present at all of these meetings. And I know that there's like often, you know, other meetings happening outside of the RHC that are like, well, what is this group doing? And we're having that same conversation. Like, yes, let's get on the same page. And let's also know what it is we're working on together, so that we have a work plan that we're coordinated around, that everybody has got buy-in to help move forward.
Tom?
Yeah, and so just to walk through these objectives, and the tech team really struggled with kind of how broad to make these goals versus how specific, not wanting to kind of preempt the work of that subcommittee and the facilitator to really craft an agenda. So we were trying to kind of, we recognize we're keeping this at probably a higher level at this point in the process, and wanting to get agreement here, knowing that as we move forward with the facilitator and the subcommittee, we'll need to kind of flesh this out in greater detail and greater specificity. And I think there is agreement that there is a desire to have this kind of what comes out of this be very actionable. So I think the tech team is largely on the same page with those comments. as we were coming up with these, we did keep it at a high level, and really the idea of the first one of affirming our intent, and I think that's kind of done a little bit beforehand. I think we're all on the same page there. But really the idea was to kind of identify what are some regional goals of the jurisdictions, whether that's related to kind of creation of so many affordable housing units or certain kind of big picture goals, and then get a real clear understanding of what is the RHC's role in helping jurisdictions and us as a region to achieve those goals. And really kind of, is it from a, what is the RHC's role from a funding perspective, but also from a policy perspective, from a collaborations perspective, where do we see kind of the RHC fitting? So I think that's kind of two, identifying some big goals for our region and jurisdictions, but then, three is where kind of getting into the meat of like, okay, how does the RHC see its role and its kind of purpose in helping the jurisdictions to achieve those specific goals? And then once we understand kind of how the RHC sees its role, getting into the specifics of, okay, what happens when the RHC does make a recommendation or something comes out of the RHC? How is that taken back to jurisdictions and implemented kind of by jurisdictions or considered? What are the next steps after the RHC takes action? So certainly agree that there's a need to kind of drill down for this, but in setting up the overall purpose, that was the thinking of the tech team. But really looking for your input and making sure that we have the input of this group to fine tune these, add, clarify as necessary, so the subcommittee has that good direction going into developing the detailed agenda.
Yeah, great. Thank you for offering that clarifying information. I think that's really helpful. Joan, I'm gonna go to you in a sec. I also just want to say, if there's any other staff or Candace or Sharlaya, and anyone who's a participant on this, if you have an opinion, feel free to raise your hand. This is an open forum. Joan?
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I just have a simple question, and I think it was asked at the very beginning of the formation of this group. And the question was, what do we want to do? What do we as a group want to do? Do we want to just do the money? Do we want to get involved in deciding things about housing on a different level, or down at the grassroots or something? What do we want to do? Or maybe another way to put it is, what do we want to be, or what do we want to be known as in the community? And it seems like when we have these discussions, we come back to the same thing. We say, well, we don't want to just be we just don't want to decide who gets the money. We want to really know what people want, or what they want us to do. Well, that's been about it, or to support with a letter or with our input for a project. But that's not, I don't know if we're looking for something that we generate, or if we're looking more to be partners in things. So, seems like we spin our wheels when we come to some of this. Let's decide what we want to be and where we want to go. Why we have to keep having retreats. No.
Yeah. Jay?
Thank you. Darian and I were talking about this a little bit in terms of kind of where the RHC goes from here. And just a thought, and this might be something to talk to facilitator about, is they're starting at the base level of saying, right now, the goal is about the money and moving the money. And then you start to talk about, to Councilmember Kathy's point, well, where else could partnership exist? What if our partnership looked like this? And then you start to say, what's the benefit if we expand, and what's the risk if we don't? And you identify all those opportunities where the RHC could come together as a partner, and you just walk through those conversations about risk versus reward of doing those things or not doing those things. And it might take you to a place of understanding where the other possibilities lie. So just a thought process that Darren and I talked about.
Thank Any additional thoughts? Charlotte, see your hands up.
I have a question to bring back to the advisory board.
Yeah.
So what is the expectation of the RHC for the chair and vice chairs of the advisory boards? What would you like our role to be at this retreat? And yeah, I guess what are your expectations of like how we're involved and etc. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It might be one that we would hope to, I think, answer in collaboration with the chairs and the vice chair of the advisory board to make sure that we approach that thoughtfully and meaningfully, so that we also answer it so that we know how involved you all would like to be too. So it's not a top-down approach, but rather sort of collaborative. One of the questions that I think I'm hoping that we're able to work on in the coming months, for instance, is also like allowing the chairs of those boards to be voting members of this group. I don't know if that is something that needs to be talked about at the retreat, or if we can just sort of put that in the work plan and work on it. But I think that's one example of something where, like, the last time we did do the retreat in Lacey was prior to formation of those advisory boards, if I recall. And we came out of that with sort of this consensus of we need to be more informed with our approach. And then we went and formed the boards. So I think like that's an example of how we can use the retreat to educate ourselves about important decisions that need to be made. And I think we could also then collaborate with you if to the extent that you would like to collaborate with us on, maybe there are some topics that aren't on this list of 4 topics for like how we can be more involved and more supportive of the advisory boards, and how we can involve them more in these processes as well. So I think we'd like to look to yourself and to Candace for your expertise on what you think would also be a valuable use of time, not just at the retreat, but also for the coming months after that, so that we can implement some of those things. I'm sure other people have thoughts too. That's just.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking for hands. I'm sure more people have thoughts. Candace?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. I think that with the Homeless Service Advisory Board, it'd be really cool to take a piece of this back to the next meeting and ask the members what they want from the Regional Housing Council, what their expectations are, like what they think the Regional Housing Council is, because I know we have some new members coming on. We're getting ready to do a lot of grant stuff. So maybe if we have an expectation outlined, can bring it to you guys and maybe like some kind of back and forth, bring that to the retreat. Just kind of see where our board's understanding is, and maybe like bring some education both ways on what our board does and what your guys' does and how we can support each other better. I also think that both the boards, Charlotte and our board, I think if we even did a little more communication, that like I don't know much of what you guys do, but I think hand in hand, all of us together could provide some key pieces if we talked a little bit more. So I'm glad we're here. Thank you.
Yeah, we've never had a joint meeting, but that could be interesting to do. Also, maybe whoever is assigned, voluntold, or whatever to the subcommittee could attend one of those meetings to create sort of an open forum in that sense. It's easy for me to assign that work when I said I don't have capacity to volunteer to be on the subcommittee. Are there additional thoughts?
I guess this would be a
Yeah.
question.
Go for it.
With the chair and vice chair, would that function like the electeds lead and alternate? So the chair would vote, but the vice chair would function as an alternate and filling in if the chair can't be there?
I think that's an option. I mean, I don't know. I think that might be outside of the scope of what we're talking about, right? Because that's right now, 'cause that's a policy decision we would have to make and revise the ILA for. So that's probably a protracted conversation and something we can talk about in terms of how that would work.
Well, I think it's an important conversation because if we added 4 voting members, that would totally change the dynamic of the organization.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's an important conversation. I think it's one we should have. But I think right
Yeah.
now we're trying to figure out what topics are there different topics or goals or whatever on the list of those 4 items that we think should be augmented, strengthened, removed, added, so on and so forth. So this could, function as one of the topics. Maybe we do want to have a discussion of this at the retreat if we think that's merited. But we're not making that's something that the subcommittee could take back. We could add that as a possibility for them to see if it makes sense to add to the agenda for the retreat. Okay. I love awkward pauses. Any other hands? I'm the king of awkward pauses. I can hold this all day. Any other thoughts?
I guess one more is, and this is not to do with any of the work that Elisa has been doing, but how we as a body communicate with one another. I think we need to take a look at that, because I think there's been times when things have happened and we weren't all on the same page, and how do we get there? How do we communicate between meetings if things come up, so that there aren't surprises?
So you mean more about internal communications with one another rather than the outward facing communication?
Right.
Okay. So norms and operating procedures with one another, sort of.
Right.
Okay.
Michael, I want to know what the cat thinks.
The cat thinks?
What the
Yeah,
cat,
Robert's cat.
Robert,
Oh.
cat, Robert, they communicating anything to you?
No, I don't know. He just wants to be held right now, and then later he just sleeps. So not very helpful, committee member.
So what's this one's name?
Oh, this is Tiberius.
Tiberius. Yes.
Yeah, it's big Maine Coon.
You better check in now and then. Might have some good ideas.
I'll ask him later.
Okay.
Hi, Gary. I missed you on the introductions, but thanks for joining us. Hailing from Yelm. Feel free to chime in.
No problem on the intros. Thank you. So we've met Brad, Brian, Darian, and I. We've had some conversations around this subject, and from the planning end of the spectrum, looking at the RHC and I guess recognizing that it's not a regional regulatory body, I tend to look at the opportunities as being a resource provider to the jurisdictions. And when I think about that, I think about all of the housing legislation, of course, that we've had and are going to have. And I think about how it would be useful to me as a planner, updating our codes and policies to be able to share information between the jurisdictions as to what good examples are for achieving things. And we are all working on this in various ways, but like approaches to anti-displacement or environmental justice and other things that as they relate to housing, and perhaps even something along the lines of creating model ordinances or sharing examples of how we've changed our codes to achieve those things, so that we can sort of assist each other and sort of make the lift a little lighter if possible because each of the jurisdictions is going to be probably pretty similar, but there may be some good ideas that could be shared, that could be made available, that jurisdictions could opt to pick up and replicate. So I guess I'm thinking about the RHC as a potentially really beneficial resource to the jurisdictions in that way.
I think that's a great point, Gary. Thanks for sharing. I know from our experience that, you know, Olympia was the jurisdiction that passed a lot of tenant protection laws, and we modeled some of our ordinances after some of theirs after they led the way on that front. And I think that, you know, we do have sort of a good of the order structure built into these meetings where we can share things like that at the end, but it's not formalized, and it's sort of just at the discretion of our jurisdictional partners. So I agree that could be an area of strength that we could leverage as an entity as we move forward. Other folks have more thoughts. Any last thoughts? We're a little over budget on the time, but this is one of the very important agenda items. So don't feel restricted in that sense. Okay, well, we'll see none. Tom, I think this is is this an adequate amount of sort of direction for next steps? We've got a couple volunteers for the subcommittee. Thanks so much, Emily and Robert, for taking on some of that work. We've got some action items and some aspirations and some hopes for next.
Yep, this is helpful. Thank you. I'll be reaching out. Robert and Emily will get something scheduled, and tech team members, think about whether you want to join this subcommittee. We'll have a couple tech team members as well. And I think just kind of a wrap-up comment is one of my hopes is we do come out of, whether we come out with an actual action plan or something that's able to inform kind of that action, the work plan for the RHC for the next, 1, 2, 3, even kind of more longer term. So really are looking to make this kind of very practical and to inform the development of what that action plan or work plan is for the RHC going forward. And I think, back to the advisory boards, there has been a little bit of confusion. The idea was originally right. They should help inform kind of some of the outside of funding discussions, and we've struggled to kind of figure out what that exactly looks like. So getting clarification with the role of the advisory boards as part of this process, once we decide, some of these questions will be valuable. So this is great. We will move forward and continue to report back on our progress. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much for helping us walk through that. Thanks also for the whole tech team for working on the memo that was on our agenda for today. I think this is a great next step. I'm excited about our next steps. So I'll move us along in the agenda to agenda item number 5. And that's regarding our Homeless Services Advisory Board, a couple of appointments. Kevin, I think you might help us sort of walk through this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Afternoon, everybody. So the Homeless Services Advisory Board has had kind of a rolling enrollment, open enrollment application process. And at the beginning of the year, we wanted to take a look at some of those applications just to get ourselves into a more comfortable position with our roster for the Homeless Services Advisory Board. At this moment, we're sitting at 10 members officially, with the minimum being 8 and the maximum being 14. Also, just a quick heads up. Can folks hear me okay? Just a quick thumbs up.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. And so we looked at the applications that have been sent in. We had 3 applications. We set up interviews with a subcommittee that included Shalaya, Candace, myself, and Alex first. And we interviewed those applicants. And came away with 2 individuals. We interviewed those applicants on January 7th. And from there, the advisory boards, I'm missing a member. Candace will fill in for me. From there, the members selected two members, Michael Jenkins and Dana Evans from our community. Michael is a resident from Lacey, has worked in direct service in our community, in and around our community, some in Pierce County, but mostly in Thurston County. Dana Evans is our current, thank you, Steph, or thank you, Candace. Stephanie from our Homeless Services Advisory Board was also on that interview panel. And then Dana Evans, the current Built for Zero coordinator, position I previously held. Both of them were recommended by the interviewers for the Homeless Services Advisory Board. The third interviewee was not selected at this time. So we're just, our recommendation is just to approve Michael Jenkins and Dana Evans. And I want to open the floor for Candace, our Homeless Services Advisory Board Chair, or Shalaya, who is here and was also on that interview panel, to give additional comments.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, I can chime in real quick. All three applicants gave pretty good interviews. I think, to speak to Dana and Michael, I think that those were a good fit for the Homeless Service Advisory Board. They are pretty knowledgeable about the services locally as of current. They both expressed, their alignment with what we're already doing. And I think that they will be great additions to what we have coming up.
Thank you. Any other comments before we get to our motion? After the motion, I do notice that both Michael and Dana are in the attendee list, so we could hear from them after the motion if I could put you guys on the spot to introduce yourselves afterwards. But seeing no other hands, is there at this point, I suppose I would entertain a motion to appoint Michael Jenkins and Dana Evans to the Homeless Service Advisory Board for 3-year terms to end December 2027. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Y'all both moved it and seconded it, but I heard Carolyn move it and I heard Emily second it. So I'll go ahead and move that order. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Michael and Dana. I see you guys are in the attendees. Is there a way we could promote them? If you don't want to, you can log off and we will not feel bad. But if you want to say hi or introduce yourselves, I see Dana, you're raising your hand. Michael, if y'all want to say hi, just feel free. We're really happy and thankful for your service and volunteering for the boards.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, because bear with me, this is a new laptop I've got, my first time putting Zoom on here, and I cannot see myself and I didn't know what was going on, so bear with me. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, Kevin. Gosh, I've got so much experience within our community, whether it be from working on a shelter floor, working in permanent supportive housing, and then with the HEM program. Plus, I have a non-profit with a partner that we go round to the encampments in Olympia and Lacey, and we serve and we give advice to those to help them when they're ready. And that's the key word there, when they're ready to get assistance to move out of the position that they're in. So forgive me, I was not expecting to talk today, but I feel that I have an awful lot that I want to share going forward. And I look forward to working with the community. That means a lot to me. By the way, can you guys see me or not? Okay. Well,
I cannot.
Okay.
We can hear you loud and clear.
I can't find the button. I'm used to Zoom prior to this, but I cannot find the camera button to turn it on. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Thank you. Thank you for your remarks and for being willing to let us put you on the spot. And for
My
your
pleasure.
support. Dana, do you want to say a couple words? Again,
Yeah,
I don't
for
mean to
sure.
put you guys on the spot, but
No worries, not at all. As mentioned, y'all, my name is Dana Evans. I use he, him, and she, her pronouns. And as Kevin spoke to, I am the current Built for Zero coordinator at Family Support Center. I also identify as someone who has lived experience with housing instability and homelessness. And I also identify as someone who's proudly in recovery from mental and behavioral health challenges. So I'm really excited to bring that lived experience to these advisory boards. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity, y'all. I can't wait to work with you.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for volunteering. I think we will benefit greatly from both of you joining our boards. We're so happy to have you, and we're so appreciative as well. Thank you. Okay, I think we'll move on now to our next agenda item. This one's about a letter encouraging the reintroduction of the Affordable Homes Act. So for this one, Emily, I'm going to rely on you to sort of chair and take us forward on this particular agenda item, since it does deal with a legislative item which would present a conflict for me. So for this agenda item, I'm going to abstain from discussion and potential votes on approval. So my alternate will be taking it for us in terms of a vote. So Emily, I'll hand the mic over to you if you don't mind walking us through this.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chair. I also wanted to say Commissioner Grant just joined us as well, so she's also here on behalf of the county. Thanks, Commissioner Grant, for joining. I'm glad you're here. So Jacinda, I know I don't want to steal your thunder. You're on the agenda as presenting or as leading this item. So I do have a little bit prepared based on what's in the agenda. But if you're going to go over that, I don't want to steal your thunder, as I said. So I'm happy to let you go over the details and then I can call for the vote, or I'm happy to do the intro, however you would like to do it.
I can do a little bit of background, and I guess if there's anything I miss, I would love your input as well, if that works for everyone. Just by way of introduction, Jacinda Stelchis with the City of Olympia. So what is before you all today is a request to issue a letter to Rep. Dolio about reintroducing the Affordable Homes Act. So as a little bit of a background, this is legislation that was introduced last year, and it didn't make it past the House and didn't get a vote and kind of move on, and ultimately obviously didn't become legislation. But this would establish this Affordable Homes Act would establish a permanent source of funding for the Housing Trust Fund. And I'll try not to be too long-winded about this, but I do think it is important to get a little bit of background on what is an Affordable Housing Trust Fund and what does that mean locally, regionally, to our housing pipeline. As you all know, we have a request for proposal and request for RFI, and that establishes our affordable housing pipeline. Many of those projects, especially large projects, rely on not only our local RHC funding, but also state funding resources. There's a heavy reliance on the Housing Trust Fund. And thus far in recent years, we have seen substantial investment in the Housing Trust Fund from the capital budget. But again, it's inconsistent and there's not a established funding source. So this would establish a funding source through real estate excise and transfer tax, REIT, and that would again be put toward affordable housing on kind of like a ground level to I guess orient everyone a little bit. It's a very competitive funding source. Again, it funds projects statewide, affordable projects statewide. So in 2023, there was significant investment in the Housing Trust Fund, but even then, there was about 93 million requested from projects that were home ownership projects and only 39 million available for award. In the multifamily rental side, there's about 456 million requested with only 274 million in awards. This year, home ownership projects requested about 93 million and there's only 17 million in available award funding. And then multifamily requested about 335 million and only 85 million in awards. So what that really boils down to are their projects, not just in our region, but statewide, that are ready to go. They are ready to start construction. They're ready to make units available. And that is not happening because there's not financing at the state level to public funding to help fund those projects. So locally, we have seen this. Lehigh's Franz Anderson Permanent Supportive Housing Project applied for Housing Trust Fund last year. That's 70 units. It did not get it last year. I'm happy to say they did get an award this year. TWG's 228 Olympia is another project for very low income. That's 84 units. That one too has local funding committed to it, but was not successful in getting Housing Trust Fund last year and didn't go in this year because staff was given instructions from Department of Commerce that we really needed to kind of focus on one project. So in a very real sense, we have units locally that are not being built because there's not enough funding. So again, the request today is to simply pen sign a letter to Rope Dolio asking that this be reintroduced and supporting that. The act does align with the Regional Housing Council's 2025 housing priorities. So that's one of the reasons y'all are hearing it today. And I know there were some questions kind of leading up to presenting this to you all about like where did the letter come from and like why did the legislation kind of stall last year. The Affordable Housing Affordable Housing Development Consortium. It has kind of a draft letter. It's been tailored a little bit to kind of give a little bit more information about our needs. That's in the packet, as well as I think like a fact sheet is also in the packet. And then in terms of like where it stalled last year, this would establish, so there were concerns that would increase development costs last year. That has been countered with the fact that many affordable housing developers are nonprofits, so they wouldn't be paying that tax anyway. It only applies to sales over 3 million essentially. There's much more in your all's packet, so I don't want to belabor the conversation. And Commissioner Klaus, if there's anything I missed, go ahead and share. But yes, that's the request today. Thank y'all.
Thank you. That was a lovely summary of the background info provided in the packet. Thank you for providing that background and context and for all the work you have put into this topic and understanding the intricacies of it. The only thing I wanted to touch on that you may have touched on, I was trying to check every paragraph as you went over it to make sure I didn't repeat anything, but even if you said this already, I think it might be worth repeating. So one thing that I found in the summary in the packet was what this would have generated if it passed last year. And I noticed in the packet that increasing the tax rate in the real estate, what is this? The RETT transfer tax. Yeah. Real estate transfer tax increase of 1% would have produced 125 million in the 25-26 biennium and 250 million in the 27-28 biennium. I don't know if you said that, maybe you already did, but I highlighted that in my packet when I read through it because I thought that was significant. Oftentimes when these kinds of legislative decisions come up, at least for the board at the county level, we always have at least one commissioner who's asking for the specific financial implications. And so when I saw that, it stood out to me as something that would have been really impressive. So I, you know, fully support this moving forward, but I know I'm here on behalf of the board and not just myself. So I did bring this up to the board this morning, and there were no qualms about it. We actually, it felt like a pretty supportive environment. There weren't very many comments, just some questions about some of the details. And so, yeah, there were no concerns at the county level, and we would be happy to support moving this forward through RHC. And that is all I have to add. Oh, I guess since I'm chairing this, I'll call on you, Danny. I see your hand.
Thank you. I'm curious about addressing the letter not just to Representative Dolio, but also to Senator Bateman. I see that Senator Bateman did sponsor it when she was in the House last year. So it's always good when you have the companion bills in each of the chambers, so that if one can move forward if another doesn't. So if there's a reason for just having it addressed to Representative Dolio, happy to know that. But otherwise, I think it'd be good to express that to both sides of the legislature.
I was going to say the same thing, and perhaps add Lisa Parsley as well, and just, you know, cover our delegation there.
Thank you for those suggestions. And then Michael, I saw you come off mute. I think, or maybe my mouse just went over your mute button. Okay. Is there any more feedback, or Jacinda, did you want to respond to that suggestion? I don't know if you have any context as to why maybe they weren't included, or would it be a good idea to add them?
Great suggestion, Danny. Yes, thank you for catching that.
Perfect. Yeah, I also think that was a great suggestion. Are there any other comments or suggestions or questions about the letter? Is everybody in support of moving this forward?
Do we need to take formal action?
Yes, that is in the agenda, so I will be calling for a vote. I just wanted to make sure there weren't any other questions, and I'm not hearing any. So we can also discuss after the second if we would like to add any more input. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. So the action proposed is to approve the letter encouraging the reintroduction of the Affordable Homes Act and authorize sending the letter to Representative Dolio, as well as Senator Bateman and Lisa Parsley.
Move
So
approval.
then, did you move, Danny? Okay. Any second?
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Alrighty. So with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody against? And any abstentions? I don't think there will be, but okay, perfect. So then that motion passes unanimously. And with that, I will pass it back over to you, Chair.
So thanks so much for handling that. I really appreciate it. So that brings us to item 7, our agenda, which is a few tech team updates. Tom and others, company, several of you, I think are gonna help us.
We're gonna tag team this a little bit. So
Yeah.
Have a couple updates for you. So I'll start off with the RFP timeline. So just a reminder, we are moving forward. We're issuing our request for proposals. That will happen on this Friday, tomorrow. No, Friday, today's Wednesday still. That will be issued on Friday. Applications will due February 28th. So we'll be posting this to our website. We have an application for Homeless Services Advisory Board, the Homeless Services, as well as our affordable housing applications. Also not under the Regional Housing Council's jurisdiction will also be our Community Development Block Grant for the county, which will be issued in our South County jurisdiction this year. So you'll be looking, advisory boards will be reviewing those applications in March. And after April meeting, they'll be bringing the recommendations to you for funding. So just a reminder about that. And then we did want to, we're working on our 5-year plan. So this is our new 5-year homeless response plan for 2025, 2030. So Elisa Spark, just wanted to make sure everyone had awareness of what's going to be happening. So Elisa Sparkman has a couple slides to walk through quickly. No, not rushing you, Elisa, but just to provide some context so everyone is aware of the development of this plan.
Thanks, Tom. So the Thurston County Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention staff is leading the development of our 5-year plan for 2025 through 2030. It's called the Local Homeless Housing Plan. And mostly the staff that's kind of overseeing this process is our homeless services staff. Just taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture, this plan is required by Commerce, and each jurisdiction that puts these together submits it to the state, and it kind of becomes part of a larger statewide plan. So a couple things about the plan. There are requirements laid out by Department of Commerce. There's public notice and public engagement requirements. There is a requirement to involve specific stakeholders, certain representatives from different areas. And then there's requirements for how to finalize the plan. And so I have a bit of I have some descriptions of how we're doing that locally. So first, I'll share the 5 objectives that Commerce laid out for the plan. We have promote an equitable, accountable, and transparent homeless crisis response system, strengthen the homeless service provider workforce, prioritize assistance based on the greatest barriers to housing stability and the greatest risk of harm, prevent episodes of homelessness whenever possible, and seek to house everyone in a stable setting that meets their needs. So those are the 5 objectives that we are following as we put this plan together. And so the roles and responsibilities of those involved in this development process is, like I said, the Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention county staff. There's the Homeless Services Advisory Board and Thurston Affordable Housing Advisory Board are helping with guidance and vetting of the plan. Our Lived Experience Housing Steering Committee is meeting every month to help provide guidance right now, and we'll be vetting the plan. And then we have the core team, which is the key stakeholders that are identified by different representatives of different areas that are required in the guidance from Commerce. So the core team really develops the engagement plan, the strategies, is getting feedback on the drafts, and participates in kind of all areas of creating the plan, developing the plan. And then finalization, it'll come to the RHC for approval and recommendation for adoption. And then the Board of County Commissioners will give the final approval for the plan. And then the timeline is we're starting public engagement in the next couple weeks. And that's with a survey. And then in the spring, we'll have some targeted outreach events that we're going to use the feedback from the survey to kind of help us help guide the discussions that we have at these targeted outreach events, and drafting the plan over the late spring and summer. And then the public comment period will be, and the public hearing will be in September. The fall is kind of when we're going, we should have everything done and be getting ready for the approval process. So October Regional Housing Council meeting for approval, approval by Board of County Commissioners in November, and then we need to submit the plan to Department of Commerce in December. So it's our timeline. And so we really wanted to let you know that the survey is about to be released. We're just finalizing it right now, getting the last bits of feedback. And there's 2 different surveys. There's one that's for the broader community. And that's going to go out to the public, and we're going to promote it widely and hope that Thurston County residents across all different walks of life complete it. And then there's specifically a provider survey that's going to go to the social service workers in our community, hopefully specifically those who work in homeless housing services, but also people who work kind of adjacent to that, who maybe interact with the homeless crisis response system, but don't work directly in it. And that is specifically because of those objectives that have to do with strengthening the social services provider, or sorry, strengthening the homeless services provider workforce. And then, like I said before, when we get the feedback from these surveys, that'll help us kind of guide the discussion that we have at our public engagement sessions that are planned for the spring. So any questions about that?
I have a quick question. Just for the surveys, I assume that you'll be sending those to the various jurisdictions so we can kind of reinforce the social media push or echo it in our communications as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and also for the general public meetings, is it possible for us to sort of attend and kind of just listen and be a fly on the wall, or would that sort of get in the way of things?
At this point, that's a great question. We can talk to the stakeholders, the core team, and the lived experience steering committee and see how they're kind of the ones who are really guiding everything. We're just kind of, you know, facilitating. So this is the cat meeting apparently today. So the core team and the lived experience steering committee are really doing a lot of the guidance on how we're doing the public engagement. So we'll get back to you on that and also give you plenty of time to know when and where those will be.
Great, that sounds great. I would show the dog at my feet, but I don't want to scare the cats away. Does anyone else have any other questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. This is really exciting.
All right, and then next on our list is our point in time count is coming up. I think folks are familiar. We do an annual point in time count at the end of every January to count those experiencing homelessness in our community. So this year we're working with United Way to help us organize the PIT. Thursday, January 30th is the main day. We'll be doing the PIT count. There'll be several events that day. There'll also be some events on January 31st on Friday, as well as the following week. So if you're looking to interested in volunteering, please reach out and we connect you with United Way. So United Way is organizing the volunteers. And so I'm looking to Kaven as well as helping to organize this event. Kaven, please weigh in if you've got anything to add, but we'll be doing surveys at Union Gospel Mission, survey Salvation Army. There'll be a large event at Sergio's Place on the afternoon of the 30th is the main event. Rosie's Place will be having an event. There'll be several senior events, both in Lacey and Olympia. What am I missing, Kaven? When is the community street?
That'll be on the 5th of February. So not exactly on pit day, but within the week of the pit.
Yeah, so just really a heads up that is coming up. And of course, those takes us a little while to collect all that data and put out our final report. So thank you, Elisa, for sharing. This is the flyer. This is being distributed that lists all the events that will be taking place. I will note there is a piece of legislation at the state this year that would have the state go to an every other year point in time count. That is a possibility with HUD. The state has required us to do it every year, so we'll see whether that passes and we end up moving to an every other year point in time count or not. But at this point, every year. Yeah, Lisa.
I just wanted to let you all know that there's a specific Facebook page for the point in time count. It's called I Count Thurston. So if you want to give that a follow and share the information that way, that would be very helpful.
All right, any questions on that? All right, and our last rapid fire item.
I think Emily raised, I think we had one hand raised.
Yeah, sorry. I had a little bit of a delayed reaction because I wasn't sure if I wanted to ask, but I did have 2 constituents reach out to me recently about whether they could volunteer at Sergio's for the hazardous weather event, which just made me think I'll probably get questions about people who want to volunteer for the pit event as well. And I see the email on here for the person at United Way, the PIC coordinator, would they be the person to reach out to volunteer?
Yeah.
Okay. Do they need to reach out directly via email to that person, or is there like an online sign up thing that they could go to?
Kaven, do you know the answer to that?
There is an online sign up. Folks can sign up through the United Way website. They also have a specific sign up for TIT activities.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
The sign up link is shared on the Facebook page. I count Thurston quite a bit.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Great, thank
Appreciate that.
you. And that is, it's not on the agenda, but that is a good reminder that we have had a hazardous weather event these last several nights. And that is ending tomorrow morning just because for staffing purposes, we'll see whether we need to reissue that next week. But there has been coming out of a hazardous weather event. And thank you to all the volunteers who have supported that, as long as with interfaith work staff. And Olympia has also been providing shelter in place survival gear during the last few days. All right, the last item
Tom,
was
just real quick before you move on from that, you're saying that the hazardous weather event is ending tomorrow?
tomorrow morning, yes.
Okay, and it's because of staffing and resources?
Yes, primarily staffing. Interfaith wasn't able to sustain staffing for the overnight shelter for additional nights. We're continuing the shelter in place survival distribution of gear.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, maybe this is something I could ask you offline to not eat up more time in the meeting, but I'm interested in knowing if Interfaith could use volunteers to maybe help with those resources. And I can also bring this information back to the board if there's anything the county can do to help, but we can maybe talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, happy to have those conversations. And they certainly use volunteers and they need so many paid staff as well. So it can't be 100% kind of volunteer run is my understanding. But yeah, we should have those follow-up conversations. All right. Just want to acknowledge kind of the...
Kaven has his hand up too.
Oh, sorry, Kaven.
Not to eat up too much more time, but I just wanted to echo what you just said, Tom, in regards to Emily's question. The shelter, the Sergio's extended shelter, over the last couple of nights, they've had 41 on the first night, 54 on the second night, 87 on the third, and 79 guests on the fourth night. So they're definitely seeing the need for it within the community, and they absolutely do need those volunteers if they can be directed that way.
Great. Thanks for sharing those numbers, Kevin. All right, I'm going to pause for a second, see if there's any other follow-up on that. All right, just wanted to kind of quickly on the rights of way. I know there's been some kind of discussion among jurisdictions around concerns around right of way, which is now the Encampment Resolution Program funding. So we are anticipating right now in the proposed budget of receiving $45 million. Well, at statewide is allocated for $45 million, which would result in about $5.5 million to Thurston County for our right-of-way projects. So as that, we are tracking that as it goes forward. Currently, we receive just roughly $9 million in right-of-way funding, so that is going to be a reduction. So as we look at that, we'll be looking at funding allocation, but we're not ready to have that discussion yet in this forum. So staff will be looking at and probably be coming with you with recommendations in April at the same time we do the broader RFP funding amount, so we can kind of marry those two things up together as we make funding decisions for our community. So just wanted to acknowledge that I know there's been some communication around right-of-way funding, that we are tracking it, and we'll be coming to you in future months with some kind of options as we decide as a region how to best utilize the right-of-way funding that we do receive. Any questions about that at this time? All right, and those are our tech team updates.
Emily?
And
see you at the end.
So my brain is still in the last year board calendar where we were meeting 3 days a week. So I was assuming that we were going to meet tomorrow as a board, but I just remembered that we don't meet 3 days a week anymore as a board as of 2025. So that kind of makes it feel more urgent to me that we figure out something so that we don't have like 80 people outside tomorrow when it's still freezing cold. So I don't know, Tom, maybe I'll just give you a call right after this, or we could stay on, because if there's something I could do to initiate board action to support this, like immediately, I'd be happy to try to do something like that. Or isn't there emergency funding that the Regional Housing Council has? Could we maybe authorize the use of some of that funding to help Interfaith keep those operations up and running?
yeah, happy to stay on after and have a call, and maybe Kevin, if you're available, and kind of talk about that. It's primarily not a funding issue. We do have funding. It's a staff availability issue.
Oh, okay.
But happy to have follow-up conversations to see if we can troubleshoot.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other final thoughts on this last sort of set of updates? Not seeing any. So we'll go ahead and move along to the communications update. Lisa?
I actually don't have any communication updates at this meeting.
Alrighty. That takes us to good of the order, open forums. Anyone, we were going to talk about the hazardous weather thing here, which is not obviously a traditional good of the order thing, but kind of just something that had come up. But are there any other updates or good of the order that anyone would like to share from their jurisdictions, either members or staff, if you have things to share? Carolyn.
Hi, I probably are going to need a little help from Jennifer or Ryan on this, but at our council meeting last night, during the city manager's report, it was talking about an interlocal among the jurisdictions about the accessory dwelling units. We've added 2 smaller footprints to the 3, I believe, that have existed. And there was an agreement about, sharing resources, architectural drawings, that sort of thing. Ryan, can you or Jennifer help me out on that? I wanted to bring this up for situational awareness, that this is out there, and this is sort of a prime example of some of the work that was envisioned for the Housing Council early on, is sharing resources like this and working together. So it's easier all the way across the board with contractors, lending institutions, and all that. So
yeah, Councilmember Cox, thanks. I'll kind of fill in the gaps. So
thank you.
as folks may be aware, we have an existing interlocal agreement that allows us to share some pre-approved accessory dwelling units across the jurisdictions of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater. That's been in place for several years now, after Lacey initially started with 2 plans. Later it became 3 through that interlocal agreement. And now, as time has gone on, those 3 plans have ceased to become code compliant. So as building codes have changed, those plans have needed to be updated. So the interlocal agreement will address, or does address, some cost sharing on that front. It also adds a 4th plan, which is, so right now we have a 400 square foot plan, 2 800 square foot plans, and then this will add a 1,000 square foot plan. So it gives us a total of 4 to share. And then the other thing it does is it does add Yelm to the partnership for sharing of the accessory dwelling unit plans. My understanding is with Lacey's council action tonight, we were actually the last council to take action. So with that, now the interlocal agreement is in place. So our staff here in Lacey will start working with the Artisans Group, a local architecture firm that developed the plans to come up with the 1,000 square foot plan, and then also make the other plans code compliant. We do have 2 additional plans, as Councilmember Cox mentioned here, kind of on the shelf in Lacey for Lacey residents to be able to use. Those were donated by a local architecture firm or architect that was retired. So that gives us here in Lacey a total of 6, but in the ILA we have a total of 4 to share. So that's where we sit today. Stay tuned. We'll have some code compliant plans hitting our shelves within the next few months, and we'll keep this interlocal agreement. I think it's intact through the next code cycle through 2027. And look forward to future success in that accessory dwelling unit program.
Thank you, Ryan.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. From our end, I might too have to phone a friend. I might have to call on Brad or Erica to help me walk through it. But last night we did pass an ordinance that adds a bit of additional density into our general commercial areas when we have mixed use buildings. It's probably, I describe it as a modest improvement, but every little bit counts, and I think it helps us to try to achieve our longer term sort of housing goals. Brad, I don't know if you would potentially be able to give kind of a 5,000 foot high level description of some of the changes we made.
Yeah, so for our general commercial zone, which is where all the big commercial properties are along I-5, Costco, Fred Meyer, Ibold, we've also had some level of commercial development. We have a very limited kind of residential uses that are located there. Basically, it has to be a 5-story apartment or larger. We wanted to do 2 things. We wanted to preserve some of our commercial space while also at the same time making sure we get the density of residential in those areas near transit. So the amendments were really intended to support that and to make some very limited changes in that area. As I told the council last night, we have a slew of other things that are coming later this year as part of the larger updates.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Brad. Anyone else have any other good of the order updates? All right, well, seeing none, not going to keep us any longer. Our next meeting is Wednesday, February 26th at 4 p.m. Thanks so much, everyone, for a productive meeting. Sorry, we went a couple minutes over, but I appreciate everyone's attention in the discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye. Emily, you've changed your hair.
Yeah, is it weird? I think it's weird. No more rainbows.
Yeah, it's just different.
Yeah.
It looks healthy and pretty though.
Thank you. That was the reason why I got rid of the rainbow, because it needs to just be I need to let it be healthy for a little bit. So I'll probably bring the rainbow back in like a year or 2. But I think my mom's happy.
There you go. Well, looking good.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Sorry, I got to jump to another meeting here.
No worries. We'll chat.
All right.
Have a good
Okay.
night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.